The next speaker for the session is a person known to almost all of us. He's a person who is so dear to us, and he's a person so dear to Swami. We welcome Professor Ravikumar, sir, who is presently the Warden of Brindavan Hostel. Before I invite him, a brief introduction. Professor T. Ravikumar came to Swami's fold as a boy in the early 60s. He joined the erstwhile Sri Satyasai Arts and Science College at Brindavan, Bangalore, as a student for his intermediate course in 1974. Later, he went on to do his bachelor's in science chemistry. Subsequently, he completed his master's in science chemistry program at a postgraduate center at Anantapur on Swami's command. In 1981, Swami appointed him as a faculty member in his Brindavan college. Later, when Bhagwan's University came into being, Swami blessed him to be one of the earliest research scholars in the Department of Chemistry at Prashanthi campus. He received the Doctor of Philosophy degree from the Divine Chancellor in the year 1990, after which he was again appointed as a faculty member in Bhagwan's College at Brindavan. After having retired as an associate professor from the Department of Chemistry, he serves as the Warden of Brindavan Hostel. Sir has lived for the last 37 years in the Sri Satyasai Hostel, guiding and training youth in the Sai way of life. He has had his training in public speaking from Bhagwan himself. He has traveled widely to different parts of the country and also parts of the world, spreading Swami's message. He will be speaking to us on the topic, the essence of Indian culture, God first, others next, oneself last. Professor Ravikumar.
Offering my humble salutations at Bhagwan's lotus feet, most beloved and dearest Bhagwan, respected elders, brothers and sisters. The essence of Indian culture. We are all attending a course, a summer course in Indian culture and spirituality. Who is a Bharatiya? Swami says, one who has rati or attachment to God is a Bharatiya. So the very fabric of Indian culture is woven with the strands of devotion to God. Why should we have devotion to God? What happens when you have devotion to God? Rather than quote scriptures, I thought I'll share my experiences with you, having stayed in Bhagwan's presence for more than 4 decades. I too came to this Brindavan College in the year 1974 as a student of the pre-university course. Before I joined this college, I was staying in Bangalore city. I was in a school which had a very unique distinction. That particular year that I joined, that school completed 100 years of existence. It was a very old and honored institution. I joined that school mainly because my uncles had studied there, my father had studied there, and therefore it was quite logical that a school of that uh, that stature, a school which had that kind of a tradition and hoary past, I should join. By the time I joined that school, many things that had been great practices during my father's and uncle's time, their generation, had slowly degraded. I joined the high school as a lad of 13 years. And on the very first day, as happens in most of the schools, we had this orientation course. First, the teachers come and explain to you about the various courses you're going to study and the subjects and the teachers and the timetable and the syllabi and all that stuff. As soon as the teacher left the class, suddenly we saw 3 students coming and standing in the front, taking over the class. I was a little surprised because they were students who had been sitting with us for that hour, although they looked a little older. So the first person said, we are your seniors. Oh. But we know more about this place than you because we have studied in this particular classroom for 3 years. So somebody asked, you're doing PhD in this class? Yeah, they had failed for 2 successful years. And therefore, they were doing PhD in 8th standard. And they said, come on, you're all new students. Let's find out whether you have understood anything about the school. What is so special about the school? Somebody said the name is a mouthful. Rai Bahadur Arkat Narayan Swami Mudaliar School. Okay. It takes quite a bit of time to get it by heart. Then someone said, the building is built of granite rock. Yeah. So, okay, what else? There is a huge playground. Balas tavat krida saktaha. For children, what attracts them is games. Games in those days and video games today, of course. So we have a huge ground in front of it. What else? What else? They said, did you not see beyond the ground? No, we didn't see beyond the ground. The ground was so huge. They said, beyond the ground, there are 3 movie theaters. You didn't see that. Most unique feature. How many schools have this great choice? 3 movie theaters. And the second student said, take our advice. Take our advice. Don't waste your time in this classroom. You will not get anything. You'll get one thing, sleep. If you sit in those classrooms, you can learn much more. If you want to learn Hindi movies. Because I'm talking of times when you had to go to a movie theater to watch movies. Today, the movies come into your mobile phones. So you don't have to go anywhere. Because this long back, 45, 47 years back. So if you want to learn Kannada movie. If you want to learn Hindi movie. Want to learn English movie. And in these movie theaters, they change every week. So, fresh syllabus every week. You can learn. So take our advice and you'll be benefited. Now, the sad thing is, probably it is called peer pressure because such advice goes directly to your heart. Right? So it went straight to our hearts. And Swamiji was telling that we need to practice. We started our practice immediately. The next day, we came to class, gave our attendance, and went to the classroom. Yeah, you got it right, the classroom. And we started seeing movies. And the class in those days used to be quite big. And those of us who were sincerely present in the other class were never missed in this class. The teacher never. We had, beautiful French windows. We had to just give the attendance and jump out to that. And we did this very sincerely. If there were 7 days in a week, we saw 7 movies. One for each day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. On Saturday, we saw 2 movies. Because Sunday is a holiday, you can't waste your education, Full benefit. So we saw 7 movies in 7 days. I came from a family where my father was sick, and he had been just cured of cancer by Bhagwan. And he was very busy with his office. And I had 3 elder sisters who were also students. The eldest herself was studying to be a doctor. They were busy with their studies. Father was busy with his work, and I was busy with my education. It continued like this. In fact, one day, I remember my father, who used to come at 7:30 in the night, suddenly came off at 5:30. And I came later. I came with a friend of mine. And my father asked, "Why are you late?" I said, "Special class." And the classmate who came with me was shocked. Such white lie, He paled. And after my father went, he said, "How can you tell such blatant lies?" I said, "What do you mean blatant lies?" I spoke the truth. He said, "What truth?" I said, "It's a special class." "How do you call it a special class? You didn't even attend class," he said. I said, "In our regular class, we have only benches, right? In the auditorium, in the movie theater, we had sofas. Special class. In our ordinary class, we had windows. And in this movie theater, we had air condition. So special class." So like that, life continued. My father thought I was really picking up, sincerely attending classes and trying to get a gold medal or something. And he was very happy and appreciative of my efforts. He didn't know what was happening. By the time I had joined the Bal Vikas, Bal Vikas, the first batch of Bal Vikas, in those days, we didn't have this group 1, group 2, group 3, and all that. It was just being formed. And so I would attend these classes on Thursdays, white dress, vibhuti. And my Bal Vikas teacher, who was alive till last week, a very great lady, Vasantama, her name is. She would tell the other students, "You should be like Ravi." And I used to pity those fellows because she didn't know what I was. It is very easy to fool the world. And therefore, I continued life like this, and I thought life would continue to be an experience of this kind till one particular Sunday. That Sunday, my father and I came to Brindavan for darshan. When we came here for darshan, we were seated in the outer grounds. There was something called a Om Sri Sai Ram shed, where you have that Saraswati idol today. And as Bhagwan came, he looked at my father and me and said, "Go inside." And then my father was very excited because he knew it was Swami is calling us for interview. I also knew that Swami was calling us for interview, and I was not really so happy. Mixed feelings, they say, something like that. Because once the topic of interview had come up, and I asked my Bal Vikas teacher, "What is so special about Swami's interview?" My concept of interview is that there's a panel and you sit in front of it and they ask you questions. Either you answer, don't answer. Then they wish you all the best and send you out. But a teacher said, no, interview with Swami is totally different. In this case, Swami does not ask you questions. You go with a list of questions, and even before you can take out the paper, Swami has answered all your questions. So he knows everything. That's what she said. And so that was the reason why mixed feelings. But why mixed feelings? Because, one side I was happy because everyone was there was envy in everyone's eyes, you can say. What a lucky fellow like that. And my father also was so thrilled that we got an interview, but, for me it was a totally different experience. I was worried that if Swami knows everything, then this interview is going to be something. So we went inside and stood in the bungalow there, old bungalow. There's an interview room just outside that. All the people whom Swami had selected were standing in a line. I happened to be the first in that line, closest to the gate. And Swami finished bhajan, arti, and came inside. When he came to us, he looked at me and very lovingly patted me on my cheeks and said, "Good boy." And there's a thrill of delight. And my father was very, very happy because Swami had called me a good boy, and Swami had called me a good boy in front of so many people. I was very happy. My father was happy, but I was actually happier than him because I thought, oh, Swami also does not know. He also he also saw that Vibhuti mark and is thinking I'm a good boy. The moment I thought like this, Swami asked my father, "Where are the other members of the Samiti?" "Swami, they are sitting outside." "Go and call them," he said. So my father went outside to call them. Excuse me. When my father went out to call them, Swami called me. "Come here," he said. Took me away from the rest of the people, And he asked me, "Where were you yesterday?" I said, "Swami, yesterday was Saturday." When you don't know the answer, mislead. All of us do that in exam paper, right? When we don't know the answer, our answer will be bigger. So, and then, as if that is not enough, we'll also write etc. There's no place in the paper to write all that I know. I can see how universal that feeling is. So I said, "Swami, yesterday was Saturday." Swami said, "I know." I said, "Swami, Saturday is a half holiday. I must have been in class." The next sentence he said was, "Yeah, you should have been in class, but where were you?" Now, this is a stiffer question paper. So I was wondering how I'm going to answer this. But in Bal Vikas, they teach you a lot of interesting stuff and important stuff, things which are useful for life. One of these is silent sitting. In those days, the parliament had not passed this Right to Information Act. If somebody asks you questions, it's not necessary you should give answer. So I just kept quiet. Swami waited for about 1 or 2 minutes with a sweet smile on his lips. And then he said, "Shall I tell you?" I was not blatant enough to tell him, "Yeah, do." But inside I was thinking, "Yeah, why not? If you know, go ahead." And Swami said, "Yesterday you were in Ajanta Theatre." First shock, So he knows that there is a Ajanta Theatre. Okay. And the second thing is, he knows that I was in that Ajanta Theatre. Bad enough. Then he said, "You were in the last but one row." And he also mentioned that you were third from the aisle. GPS. And then he said, and you were watching Katti Patang. And Rajesh Khanna, Asha Parekh, you want some more information? Why would I want any more information? You know, I could see my father coming. This was a dangerous time to ask for information. My immediate thought was, within 2 seconds, my father is going to reach here, and Swami is going to tell him all this. We'll say, this fellow, you think he's a good boy? You know, this is what he does, and so on. And what will my father's reaction be? He will do Shashtang Pranam to Swami and say, Swami, you're God. So my heart was beating faster and faster, as my father was coming nearer and nearer. And as soon as my father reached, Swami just patted me on my cheeks and told my father, good boy. But then he added a line. He said, he's a good boy, but I am telling him to keep good company, not movie company, right? Good company. And then Swami called us for an interview, and in that interview, the interview went on for an hour and a half and all that. What happened during that interview, I have absolutely no idea. All that I remember is one question which kept on going through my mind. I asked myself, can there be someone so kind? Somebody who knows all about me, but who will never let me down in front of others. Who will only love me, and love me the way I am. He's not expecting me to become something before he loves me. He loves me the way I am. If somebody can be so omniscient and so loving, he cannot but be God. And therefore, I was convinced that Swami is God, and I decided that I would spend the rest of my life serving him. When you come to God, when you accept someone as God, what happens to your life? You know, when God gives you an experience, it's such a beautiful experience. It's a poetic experience. See, God is the greatest poet. He makes things so beautiful. It could have been any other film. But the film which I saw that day and for which he showed me that he knows everything was called Katti Patang. It was a runaway kite, you know, the kite whose string had got cut, no control. It can go and fall on any bush or any thorn or any cow dung or whatever. It can be stamped by people. And then what did he do? By this very incident, Swami tied the string of my life to his feet. And once the string is tied, you know, the kite flies high, and the kite remains high, and that is what has happened to my life. When you keep God first, you're sure to be victorious. In Indian culture, we have a number of instances. You know, these Puranas contain a number of these anecdotes and incidents which tell us about this. Puranas themselves are Pura api navam. Even though they are old, they are new. In the sense that even though the contents may be old, the relevance continues. You know, it is there for the contemporary world at all times. There is this famous incident which we see in the Mahabharata. The war is imminent. The Kauravas and the Pandavas are getting ready for the battle. They want to collect their resources and get as many people on their side. And of course, who is the best resource you can get? Lord Krishna. So, both Duryodhana and Arjuna decide to go to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is lying down with his eyes closed, and Duryodhana comes. He flicks his mace, looks at Krishna and says, what a pity. I have to come to this cow herd to ask him for help. But nevertheless, better keep him out of, means keep myself out of trouble. Better to ask him for help. But why he sees that there are two places which can be occupied. One is at the feet of Krishna, and there's a chair at the head of Krishna. He said, let me sit at this place. Sits at the head. A few minutes later, Arjuna comes, full of devotion and humility. He comes, bows to the Lord, goes and sits at his feet. And after a few seconds, the Lord, who is a good director, playing the role of an actor, he opens his eyes and says, Arjuna, you have come. And Duryodhana gets irritated. He clears his throat. And Krishna says, oh, you also have come, Duryodhana. Both of you here? Then both of them say, Lord, we have come to ask for your help. Krishna says, look, both of you are close to me. You know, in the Lord's words, there is always a beauty. He says, both of you are close to me. And Arjuna feels happy. Because Arjuna thinks, yes, Lord, I want to be dear to you. I want to be near to you. I want to be close to you. But the Lord has said the same word to Duryodhana. What does he mean? He actually does not mean close to me, closed to me. You are closed to my influence. And so, he says, both of you are close to me. So, I would like to make this offer. On one side, the entire Yadava army, with all weapons and cavalry and elephants and foot soldiers. On the other, I alone, unarmed. You can choose between these two. And Arjuna, you choose first. Duryodhana protests, say, no, I came first. Lord, give me the chance. Krishna, give me the chance. Krishna says, no, but when I got up, my eyes fell on Arjuna, so Arjuna gets the chance first. No? The benefit, the advantage of humility. Sitting at the Lord's feet, Arjuna got the Lord's eyes fell on Arjuna first. So Arjuna had no hesitation. He said, Lord, I want you. And Duryodhana heaved a sigh of relief. My God, what a fool he is. Made the wrong choice. And then Duryodhana said, Lord, actually it would have been nice to have you. But Arjuna, you gave Arjuna the choice. He made a choice. Okay, I will settle for the Yadava army. And Krishna said, okay, so be it. And Duryodhana took leave and went. Arjuna was sitting at the Lord's feet doing Padseva. Krishna says, Arjuna, what is this stupidity? Why did you choose me? I am unarmed, alone. And there is this whole huge Yadava army, fully trained. You should have chosen that, Arjuna. Arjuna said, Lord, being with you, having been with you, I also have become smart. I have chosen you because I know that wherever you are, victory is. How do you say this, Arjuna? Krishna says. Then Arjuna says, it's like this. There are a number of bogies in the train, and Arjuna the Kauravas had chosen all the bogies, and Arjuna has chosen the engine. He has taken the Lord because wherever the engine goes, there alone victory will be, there alone movement can be, there alone progress can be. What can the bogies do? By themselves. So when you have devotion to the Lord's feet, your life becomes victorious. There are these small battles that come our way. You're all students. I have also been a student, though it looks quite long back. As a student, when you're a teacher, of course, you continue to be a student, but you don't have the privilege of sitting in the class and sleeping. You have to stand and teach. There was this first year pre-university class that I joined Brindavan. And one of my fears was mathematics. Yesterday when they asked this question, what is a plus b squared, whole squared, and all of you answered. I said, my God, got a galaxy of mathematicians here. And I thought of myself how I was pathetic in mathematics when I joined Brindavan. There was one teacher whom we had, who was an old teacher, a professor of mathematics, who used to teach us very well. And I was a last bencher. And when he used to teach, I couldn't understand anything. In mathematics, they have this sine and cos and tan and all that. I said, what is all this nonsense? Why should I worry about sine and cos and tan? Tan you get outside, not sitting inside. And there was this teacher who would ask, have you understood? In all our classrooms, whether it's those days or these days, I'm sure you understand, you are aware, there will be people in the front bench who will shake their head so much that the teacher will think the whole class has understood. And we had a few like that in our class. And the teacher thought all of us have understood. I did not understand one bit of what he said. And the whole year went, and then the exams came. As the exams came nearer and nearer, I got more and more scared. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? What is going to happen? That's the only thought, Not able to study because this thought occupies your entire mental space. And the mathematics exam was coming. We had a beautiful opportunity those days. The entire hostel consisted of just 60 students. So every day before exams, you can walk up to the mandir, take Swami's namaskar, and come down and write the exams. So I was sure I'll go up, take namaskar, and come down, and some miracle will happen, and I will reach the shore. But God's ways are very, very different. On the day of maths exam, when I went upstairs, Swami was scolding somebody. There was a caretaker in the ashram. His name was Ravikumar. A huge person. And his voice was booming. If he calls, watchman, he calls. Wherever the watchman is sleeping, he'll get up and tie a shoelace. Whichever corner of the ashram. Now Swami was scolding this person, and he was standing meekly in front of Swami. And this was the sight which greeted me when I went up. Swami was visibly angry with him. As soon as I entered the room, Swami said, hey, you come here. And he included me in that select group. So he asked me, how much money do you get from home? 100 rupees, Swami. That was for a month, for a month. Swami said, 100 rupees? I had said 100 rupees. Of course, in those days, 100 rupees had some value. It's not like today, if you give 100 rupees to a beggar, he'll give you a 500 rupee note, thinking your need is greater than mine. 100 rupees, I said. Swami said, 100 rupees? What do you do with 100 rupees? The first part was easy. Swami, 65 rupees mess bill, Swami. 65 rupees was the mess bill for the whole month. They would have all the sessions and 65 rupees. And there were many times when the warden found it difficult to manage in 65, and he would go to Swami and said, Swami, let us increase it to 70 rupees. Swami said, nothing doing. Keep it at 65. So it continued for year after year. And one year, finally, the warden was able to convince Swami that it should be increased to 70 rupees. He came, called the AVC boys and said, the audio-visual boys, and said, get the mics ready and call all the boys. So they rang the bell, all of us assembled, and the mics were being arranged. And the warden was visibly happy. Suddenly, somebody came and said, sir, Swami is calling you. So he ran upstairs, and Swami asked, what day is tomorrow? He said, some Tuesday or something. Swami said, no, not that. What function is tomorrow? He said, Swami, tomorrow is Ugadi. Swami said, is this the gift you want to give boys on Ugadi day? Nothing doing, don't raise the mess bill. So the mess bill continued at 65 for a number of years. So 65 rupees for mess bill, Swami. That's sari, Swami said. What about the other 35 rupees? I said, Swami, haircut. How many times in a month? He said. Only once. Then I said, Swami, soap. How many soaps do you use in a month? Kept quiet. Our complexion itself is an answer to that question. I didn't say anything. Then Swami said, Cheppu, come on. I was thinking maths exams there and accountancy exam here. I was not able to bridge, how much ever I am trying, it's not, that gap is not bridging. That 25 rupees are, unfortunately, those days soaps used to be very cheap. Hair oil used to be very cheap. Haircut used to be so cheap. If only they had been costly. Today I could have said, Swami, soap. Soap would have been 35 rupees. So it would have covered. But anyway, I couldn't bridge that. And what do? You pray to the same Lord, no? So I just mentally prayed, Swami, don't ask tough questions. And just then the exam bell rang. The hall where all the girls have your dining sessions and all the boys have your yoga sessions, that was the college that time. That is where our exam hall was. You can imagine where Trai is, that was Swami's mandir. So we could hear the college bell. Swami looked at me and asked, breakfast ainda? He asked. No, first he asked, exam unda? He asked. I was aghast. Swami is asking in such a normal tone, exam unda, it's not an ordinary exam, it's maths exam. In these advertisements, they have this, it's not a car, it's a car, like that. So I was thinking, I said, Swami, maths exam. Breakfast ainda? Swami said, did you have breakfast? No, Swami. Go and have your breakfast and go for the exam. I said, okay, Swami. I had learned one thing in life, whether you understand or not, just obey what he says. So I straight went to the hostel, had my breakfast, and went to the exam hall. That was 20 minutes late. When I arrived at the exam hall, the maths teacher was there, outside. Yes, Ravikumar, what happened? What happened? I said, sir, long story. He thought I had given up the battle even before it began. Sir, long story, I'll tell you afterwards. He said, yes, just go inside. They won't give you a question paper otherwise. I went inside. They gave me a question paper. I looked at the question paper and I was very thrilled. Because that particular year, the examiner had asked 8 theorems. Theorems are something that you can get by heart and... Yes, exact. So I knew I can answer this very well. I started off with the first question. At the end of the first, in the middle of the first question, these mathematicians put some booby traps, Like, let x be equal to, they'll say. Why they get such ideas, I don't know. Let x be equal to what? I don't know. I forgot that. And for the next 20 minutes, I was trying to find out what x equal to what. I said, can't we leave it as x? We can't. And so it continued. Next 20 minutes, I said, let me go to the next question. I went to the next question, but my mind was with the first question. And so second question I spoiled, third question I spoiled. Successfully, all the 8 questions I spoiled. By the time the bell rang, and the invigilator came, paper, he said. I looked at my paper, all debris of fractured theorems, not even one of them complete. I remember folding the paper and giving it to the teacher and thinking, my gain is your loss. I gave it to him and I came out and I saw the maths teacher was standing outside. The moment he saw me, he pounced on me. He said, Ravikumar, how did you do the exam? I said, sir, I'm very touched. I mean, he was shocked. Nobody gets touched by mathematics paper. I said, I'm very shocked, sir. He said, why? I said, sir, you came to the exam before me, and you waited 3 hours to ask this question. Then he said, no, it's not like that. If you pass, we will get 100% pass. That's why I waited to check up. So I sat with him and we went through the questions. In this question, I wrote this much, sir. This is what I wrote, this is what I wrote. And at the end of it, I asked, sir, will I pass? He took a handkerchief and wiped his brow. And he said, look, Ravikumar, 40 to 50,000 people are writing this exam. God knows where your paper will go. But one thing is certain, he said. What is that? He said, if on the day your paper is being corrected, whoever is correcting your paper, suppose he has not fought with his wife, or she has not fought with the husband, and there's no traffic jam, and the children are all pleasant and happy, and he sees your paper first, he may even give you 35 marks. I mean, all these impossibilities, and 35 marks. My God. So the whole holidays, you know how it went. It went in prayer, in penitence. And that year, Swami took me with him to Mumbai. There was a drama which we put up in front of Swami. And as we went through the drama, on the last day when we are coming, Swami looked at me and said, you come to Patti. So we went to Patti. As we went to Patti, Swami called me for an interview and asked me, what do you want? I was thrilled, you read in the Puranas and all, people do tapas for thousands of years, and the Lord comes and says, what boon do you want? And they say, should not be killed in air, on earth, in water, in fire, all that they say, isn't it? I just said, Swami, I should pass in mathematics. And Swami said, that is over. What else do you want? For me, I thought God had stretched himself in giving this boon itself. So I said, no, I don't want anything, Swami. And 1 month later, the results came. The principal used to give the results to Swami, the progress reports. And Swami would read out our names and give it to us. We are only 60 boys in the hostel. So Swami read out each boy's name and gave. My name came, Swami said Ravikumar and gave it to me. And went to the next name, which was Santosh or something. I was looking at the report card because in red letters it was written passed. And Swami said, hey, Chusava, he said, did you see? Yes, Swami, I have passed. Swami said, mathematics lo enta vachindi. How much did you get in mathematics? Then I looked at it, it was 53. Then Swami asked me, but you wrote for 35 marks, no? He said. I had not told him. I had only told the teacher. I had only told teacher what I wrote, and the teacher had assessed it will be 35 marks. Etla, how could you have got? Swami asked me. I said, I don't know. You did something, Swami. Swami said, from now onwards, study well. See, when you have God on your side, even if you fail, he will make you succeed. And then, of course, he doesn't leave you at that. A few months later, I had to choose between taking BSc. In house there was a lot of discussion. Somebody said, you must take CA because it is very good. There was an uncle. There is an uncle, still he is alive. He said, CA is a very good course. It has a lot of respect in society and so on. There was another uncle who was in a factory, and he said, no, we need good engineers, so you do engineering. And my father was very clear. He said, no, do medicine. I said, why medicine? He said, because your sister's books are there. I don't have to buy books. But I was determined to stay at Swami's feet and continue studies here. I had been so won over by Swami's love that I thought there was nothing else in life than to stay at his lotus feet. So I was praying to Swami. I just told all these elders, is it okay if I do what Swami says? They said, of course. Swami is the Supreme Court. Whatever he says, you can do. And just before the time I was to choose, Swami came in my dream and said, what are you going to do next? I said, Swami, you should tell. Swami said, do that which will help you to do MSc later. So automatically it was BSc, engineering was out, MBBS was out, CA was out, and so I chose BSc. But now again there was a problem. Do you take bioscience or do you take mathematics? Mathematics I had already drowned once. Drunk so much of water, he had to take me out and make me survive. And so I thought, I will take bioscience. But bioscience also I had some fears because, a few months before that, we had dissections in our bioscience. They give you a frog, and they ask you to dissect nervous system, circulatory system, digestive system, and all. And the miracle was, all the frogs that I dissected had some anomaly. Nervous system, when I was dissecting, it won't have brains. And the circulatory system, it will not have heart. And I told this to one classmate of mine. His name was Sundarajan. Sundarajan, I don't know why the frogs which I get always have an anomaly. He said, no, the frog has brains, you don't, he said. And then he said, it's lucky that it's a frog. If it was a human being, he would have taken you to court. Never become a doctor, he told me. And so bioscience means dissection. I thought that was worse. So best thing is to ask Swami. So I went to Swami and asked, Swami, what should I do next? Swami said, mathematics, teesko. Very normally he said, take mathematics. Once Swami says, take mathematics, there's no other thought. So straight away I took mathematics. By Swami's grace, tell this in all humility, that at the end of the year, in fact, I remember it was in this very auditorium, I had just finished giving my speech. And as I was going back, one of my classmates came running to me and said, hey, Ravikumar, you got a rank in the university. How did I get a rank? Of course, I was very proud. I said, I've got a rank in the university. He went up and stood outside Swami's room as he was coming. Swami came out and asked, what's the news? Emi samacharam. I said, Swami, padan namaskar. Enduku? Swami said, why? Swami, I've got a rank in the university. Then he asked, how much did you get in mathematics? I was happy, because earlier Swami had just lifted me out of the brink. So I said, Swami, 90%. And I thought Swami to pat me. And the Swami said, 90%? What is that marks? Mathematics, 90%? You should get 10%. And therefore, after that, of course, mathematics took a back seat. And I had to choose for my masters. I went and asked Swami, what subject should I choose? And Swami said, choose that in which you got the minimum marks. And that's how I fell into chemistry. Okay? So that's how I was introduced as a chemistry lecturer. So when you have God on your side, the direction becomes very clear. The direction of your life becomes very clear. Success becomes attached to you. Okay, but the next step is what? The next step is others next. Okay. Why should you put others next? Because Swami says, Parulukadu. The others are not others. They are yourself reflected in the world. Okay, so when your reflection is seen in the world, it is seen as others. So you must serve others. I had a beautiful experience of this, of the living Indian culture, when I went for Gram Seva some years back. We had gone around the villages near Puttaparthi, and there was this very, very poor Lambadi village, and there was a section in which all the people, Lambadis, were staying. And there were others also staying there. And one youth came with us and said, I would like to translate for you. So he came with us and we went from house to house distributing prasadam and saris and dhotis and so on. One particular house, when we went in, we saw that it was the rooftop, it was a hut. There was a big hole on the top. You could see the sky right from inside. And there was this old lady, must be about 80 years. And this youth who had come with us was explaining to them that these people have brought something to give you from Bhagwan. and this is the prasadam and so on. But she kept on asking him some question. And first he said no. Then he said no slightly tersely. Then she kept on pestering him. And finally he kind of said, no, don't pester me, something like that he said. So I asked him, see, what did that old lady say? What did she ask that you got so angry? Then he said, no, sir, she does not understand. I told her that you have come from Bhagwan to give prasadam, but she keeps on insisting that she has grown some vegetables in her backyard which she wants to give you. You see, others next. She was able to think of me even in her poverty. She was so poor that she could not repair her hut. There was so much of poverty, but that poverty was only in the external circumstance. You see, she was so rich in her spirit. She was so rich in her giving. And as yesterday the speaker, the Honorable Justice mentioned, Swami Vivekananda said that they alone live who live for others. All others are more dead than alive. So you have others next, and the last one, oneself last. Why should you put oneself last? Swami says the biggest source of all our problems is ahankar, I. He says ahankar is actually aham akar. Thinking that I am this, I am so and so is the source of all our problems. Why is it the source of all our problems? Because it's like sitting in the car and thinking that I am the car. That is the mistake that all of us do. Swami reminds us that there are two types of I's. There is a three-letter I, E-Y-E, and a single letter I, capital I. He says, this I, E-Y-E, take care of it. But it can be dangerous if you get too much attached to this I, which represents the physical body. You must graduate from this to the capital letter I, which is the divine. In my own life, Swami has shown me how this can be done in a very beautiful experience, which I consider as the most sacred experience of my life. I think I'll take the next 10 minutes to speak about this. I was doing my master's course in Anantapur, and those who were my seniors in Brindavan had become lecturers in Prashanti Nilayam campus, which had opened just that year. And so they had decided to put up a program. It was on the life of Jesus. It was a drama. They went to Swami with this script and said, Swami, we would like to put up this drama for the international conference which is coming up. We want your permission. Swami said, yeah, good idea. Go ahead. Put up the drama. And Swami asked who is playing the various roles. They showed the cast. And one particular name Swami pointed out, one particular role Swami pointed out and said, put Ravi in this cast, in this role. They said, Swami, Ravi is staying 80 kilometers away at Anantapur. Swami said, yes, I know that he is staying there, but he comes at weekends so he can practice at that time. Put him in this role. So when I came that weekend, I was told that I have been put in a role of a blind beggar in the times of Jesus. And the drama was about Jesus' life, kingdom of heaven. Swami also came and told me, I have selected you for a drama. I was very happy. As we were sitting there was this gentleman, Mr. Christopher St. John. He was from Hollywood. And Swami told him, take these boys and teach them, means direct their play. So we went to the Purnachanda auditorium and we were practicing our play. And I was told, my role is this. You're a blind beggar sitting in the corner of the road, in the curb. And somebody comes and tells you that, the Son of Man is coming. Jesus Christ is coming. He does a lot of miracles. Why don't you go and ask him to give you eyesight? He will give you eyesight. So immediately I go and tell him, Lord, give me eyesight. And he says, do you have the faith that I can give you? I said, yeah, I have the faith. And so he just touches my eyes. I get the eyesight in the drama. When we were practicing this, Swami came from the side entrance, and with a sweet smile on his lips, he said, Sai Baba came and you got your eyesight, he said. And so all of us, were very happy, Swami mentioned this. And the next day, when we were practicing, there was applause outside. And when Swami came inside, Swami asked, did you hear that applause? Yes, Swami. Swami said, there was a girl in the darshan line, 18 years, who was born blind. I gave her eyesight. I will give you also eyesight. That's what he said. So I was surprised. This is a drama in which I have lost eyesight. Why is Swami mentioning this again and again? The drama got over, and I went back to my studies, completed my studies, became a lecturer in Brindavan, and went to Parthi. I was doing my research one afternoon when suddenly everyone had gone for lunch and the last student was leaving. He asked me, are you coming? I said, I'll finish this experiment and come. And he went away. As I was mixing concentrated sulfuric acid with some other chemical, the whole thing exploded into my eye, because I didn't have my spectacle at that time, and I lost my eyesight. And at that time, I screamed Swami's name, and this boy who had gone about 100 feet away heard my voice, came running and asked, what happened? I said, concentrated sulfuric acid in my eye, take me to the tap. He took me to the tap, but there was no water in the tap. Because, next building, some repairs, plumbing repairs were there, they had switched off the water. So we went from tap to tap in the chemistry lab, and finally we found a tap which had water. And after washing for a long time, we realized that this is not the solution because it was still burning. Went to the general hospital. General hospital those days could be accessed only from the university road. So there was a student who held me by my hand and took me, because I couldn't see, took me there. And the sister who was there said, the nurse who was there said, what happened? Then this boy explained he had an eye accident, and so I brought him here. She said, why did you bring him here? He said, because it's a hospital. I brought him here. Then she said, no, that's not the point. The only eye doctor whom we have has gone to Sri Lanka. And we don't have an eye doctor. Take him to Bangalore. So this boy said, shall we go to Bangalore? I said, no, Swami is here. We'll go for to Swami's mandir. That evening, as Swami was going, this boy was sitting next to me, giving me a running commentary. And, the elders explained to Swami that I had lost my eyes. Swami gave me 3 packets of vibhuti and said, take this and you'll be fine. So the next 3 days, I took this vibhuti. And last bit of vibhuti was over. I had licked everything. And, still I didn't have eyesight. I was blind. And, it was at that time that I was very depressed. I said, 27 years you study so much. And finally, I think it is not 27, it is around that much. So you study so much, and finally what happens? You lose your eyesight. And you're useless, because my whole aim had to be to do some service for Swami's, at Swami's feet. And I said, now I need somebody to do service for me. What a sad state of affairs. So I lay down and slept. I didn't even lie down. There was an extension to the chair. I just put my hand like that. I slept off on the chair itself. Next morning, there was a knock on the door. I said, please come in. And the boy who came in, I said, oh, you brought my coffee. He said, what dress am I wearing? I said, cream t-shirt and gray track pant. And he said, sir, you can see. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks that I could see. Not only could I see, I could see color also. For the next few minutes, I didn't know what to do. I was so filled with joy, so filled with awe, so filled with joy and feeling of devotion to Swami. I went for darshan. Swami came to me and said, how are your eyes, sir? He asked. And when at the moments when when it's very intense, your tongue doesn't talk, it's your eyes which talk. And as I cried at his lotus feet, he patted me, he said, go to Bangalore, get yourself a pair of spectacles, and wear it in the lab always, but be careful next time. That sent a shiver down my spine, because there was going to be a next time. And it happened a few years later when I was finishing my PhD. When I was doing an important experiment, the specs promptly fell down and broke. And I had to continue the experiment. I thought, otherwise my entire program would get displaced by another 3 months. I knew that Swami had said, be careful next time. So I said, I'll be very careful. But as I was working, I had put chromic acid, which is sulfuric acid, plus potassium dichromate, 70 degrees, fumes coming. When the whole thing, I connected to a vacuum pump, and it imploded, sending the entire acid into my eyes. And second time, I lost my eyesight. The fear at that time was, Swami is going to scold me now, because he warned me. When I went to the tap, there were people around me. We washed and washed and washed. Water was there. But it wouldn't stop burning. We went to the hospital. Somebody led me as last time. And this time, the doctor took that boy to the next room and whispered something. When he came back, I found out from him that the doctor had said that I had lost my eyesight and nothing could be done about it. That evening when I went, Swami saw all that bandage around my eyes, people say, because I couldn't see. Swami came running towards me and asked, what happened, what happened? And then he said, careless boy, I told you to be careful. And then he held my hand, created vibhuti and gave and said, everything will be all right, go and get your dressing changed tomorrow. The next day when I went to the hospital, the eye doctor examined me with some telescope or some kind of a scope, took me outside, took me inside, took me outside, took me inside, rubbed her eyes and said, something is wrong with my eyes. I asked her what happened. She said, yesterday there was nothing and today your eyes are fine. I told her, Swami gave me vibhuti and yes, I can see you completely. And that's how I got back my eyesight. You know, the three-letter I, in my case had been useful in pointing out the single letter big I. So when you have God first and others next and put yourself last, he makes sure that you realize that you are ultimately God himself, so you are first. Even though you put yourself last, he makes you first. He makes you victorious. I will end with a prayer to Bhagwan that he utilizes this humble child of his in his service till my very last breath. Thank you, Sai Ram.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful talk. Some of the takeaways from sir's talk. With a simple narrative interspersed with humor, sir drove his message straight into the audience's heart. Can there be any person who knows all about us and yet loves us wholly? Only God is capable of this. Saving our face seemed more important to Swami than establishing his divinity. Let us choose the Lord because he is the engine. Rest are just bogies. He is the only one who can make you succeed even if you fail. Others are your reflection. There is nothing more important than serving the Lord, is Sir's central message. Thank you again, sir.